Hello and welcome to Press TV Spotlight. I'm Marzia Hashimi. Thanks so much for being with us. This is a watershed moment in the United States. At least that is what many political analysts are saying about the overall political environment in the country after conservative activist and podcaster Charlie Kirk was killed last week. Now, those on the right are accusing those on the left of declaring war on them, and many on the left are blaming the right for creating a violent and biased environment. There are many unanswered questions regarding Kirk's killing, but what is obvious is that the political divide in the U.S. is not only wide, but many may say it's fatal for the regime. We'll be taking a look at this on this Spotlight. I'd like to welcome my guests to the program. Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist out of Bristol, UK. And William Jones, political analyst out of Leesburg, out of the U.S. Thank you both for being with me. Let's start off with Tony. Your thoughts, Tony. Do you think that this is a watershed moment in the U.S.?
Well, look, his movement was called Turning Point, wasn't it? In fact, it could be that Charlie Kirk himself ends up being the turning point where many people on the Republican right side of US politics start to wake up to, as Charlie was doing, the malign influence of the Israelis that they spend most of their time supporting the last decades on US politics. But I want to, I think, correct you describing Charlie, because he was a Christian leader. He wasn't an activist. He was a leader. He was a leader of thought, a leader of opinion. He wasn't really your standard Republican. So he was part of Trump's MAGA movement. So he was somebody who you could imagine in maybe 10, 15 years' time becoming part of the national leadership. This is, I think, one of the most disturbing things about this assassination is the fact that Charlie was going places. And the other thing is he was adapting. His ideas were adapting to the facts. So he wasn't rigidly pro-Israel. He has been for many years. But over the last few months, he's been, for example, questioning whether there was a deliberate stand down of the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, the army, on October the 7th, 2023. He's openly saying, I think that that's a question that they've got to answer. He's doing many other things to question Netanyahu's wisdom of the Gaza genocide policy. He started calling it a genocide. He started calling it ethnic cleansing. So he was somebody who was his own man. And of course, we don't like that in the West. We like to have politicians that have one set opinion and stick to it. And by the way, what the elite in the West really love is a politician like Starmer, who will just read out any script that is put in front of him and doesn't have any set opinions. Charlie Kirk represented the absolute opposite of that. Someone with a conscience, a committed Christian who kept Christian values. That's the values of Jesus Christ, anti-abortion, all these sorts of things. And he actually debated with people who were supporters of the Church of Satan, saying that, look, you know, abortion is wrong, especially up until very close to the time of birth. It's wrong under any circumstances. And our duty as human beings is to protect these unborn children. We were all once one of them ourselves. These are the sorts of values that Charlie represented. And I think that's why he was assassinated. That's why he was murdered, whether it was an organized assassination or, as we saw, I think possibly with the attempt to kill Trump, there was a climate had been created around this idea that this guy is a fascist, a Nazi, a load of smear campaigns circulated through the mainstream press and on social media that then wound individuals up to think, well, it's going to be a good thing. I'm going to be cool with my mates if I go and kill this so-called fascist. So I think that's really where we are with Charlie, a very, very important assassination that could indeed turn events in the United States to recognize that, no, it's no good for the MAGA and the Republican part or any of the Americans to be supporting the Israeli genocide.
All right. Well, William, your thoughts on that. And who do you think benefits, if anyone, from the killing of Charlie Kirk?
Well, I don't know that anyone really benefits from it. I do think it is a watershed moment in a much different way than the previous speaker. It's really a watershed moment for the ability of the American republic to continue as a republic. There are a lot of divided opinions today. There's always diversity within the American political body. Nevertheless, things have become, because of internet, because of everything, all kinds of information, misinformation being put out on the social media, that emotions can be revved up to a point that lead to such a violent encounter. And I think people are beginning to understand this now. Everybody, of course, is playing it, in their own way for political reasons. But I think the basic ideas, the basic lessons of that were pointed out by the governor of Utah in a speech that he made when they announced that they had caught the killer, where he appealed to the American people to come together to deal with their differences in the open public forum, to discuss the issues, to lay out the facts, and to do it with a sense of comity and with a sense that we are living in one nation and have somehow got to work together. That's going to be a difficult task going in because of the intensity of the divergences that have occurred over the last 5 to 10 years in the political arena. But this is the only way that you can avoid chaos going forward. It will be a difficult task, but it's really the future of the American Republic as a democracy in which people themselves have the ability both to express what they feel and what they believe, but also in such a way that they are not becoming targets of another part of the political spectrum which want to eliminate them physically. And I think we have to I think most Americans are beginning to think of this in terms of, not so much of vengeance, of getting back at alleged enemies. And as far as we can see, this individual who did the killing, we don't know what he was motivated about. We don't know his view on the issue of Israel. We don't know his view on the view of LGBT, which was also a part of this. We don't know what his views were, but I think in asserting that this somehow is a move in a political game, I think that's just not the case. Other people were convinced that it had something to do with the Ukraine war, that the victim had been very outspoken in trying to get the United States to leave Ukraine and to find a resolution of this, and some people don't like that. But I think it's much more complicated, and we have to leave it to the investigators to see what happened. But I think the lessons for Americans now are to find a way in which we can come back to a situation in which we can discuss our differences, in which we can resolve them in a peaceful way to avoid these kind of things from happening in the future.
Okay, well, Tony, how likely is this to affect the overall future political environment in the United States?
Yeah, good question, because I think what we're seeing is with this decapitation, these sorts of assassinations, political assassinations, really the entire FBI in the United States, MI5 in Britain, and in other European countries all have their internal security services that are supposed to be there to make sure things like this never happen. They are the political police. They're supposed to be the political police. But I think what we're seeing now with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump last year in July, and this now possibly the suspect they've got, Tyler Robinson, for murdering and assassinating Charlie Kirk. These individuals, I mean, what's happening is this same policy that we've been seeing. In other words, the assassinations of political and military leaders in Russia, political and military leaders in Palestine, in Iran, the destruction of many of the senior individuals, including journalists, etc., in Yemen just last week. The idea that these institutions which keep a country stable, its press, its democratic politics, etc., that they are it's an open season on these yes, absolutely right, this is a chaos agenda, but the thing is, we've been used over the last couple of years of seeing the Israelis and others perpetrating this over in the Middle East, and it now looks as if that same mentality is coming back to the United States. I mean, it's a while since we saw high-level political assassination attempts like that of John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, which turns out to have been connected with, actually within the United States, with the FBI, etc. And the main motivation seems to be towards the stopping of the, because Kennedy wanted to stop the Vietnam War, etc., and he wanted Lyndon Johnson in. There is a very interesting documentary by Laurent Guillenot which explains, which calls Israel and the Assassination of the Kennedy Brothers, which says that Kennedy was trying to stop the Israelis getting.
So basically, let me just jump in here, Tony.
No, don't interrupt me, please.
Basically,
Kennedy
what you're
was
saying.
Trying to stop. This is the connection. Kennedy was trying to stop the Israelis getting nuclear technology at the time. So what I'm saying is, I do think there's, I mean, we've heard from the Grey Zone, for example, that Netanyahu was trying to fund Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk refused the money from Netanyahu because he thought that it was tainted. He was starting to turn away, and it's rather disgusting to see Netanyahu put across Charlie Kirk as some sort of Israeli martyr, when actually the opposite is the truth. Charlie Kirk was turning away from his support of Israel completely, Marcia. And so I think, again, the main problem here is we cannot allow, none of our security services can allow this kind of encouragement of young people to go out assassinating in the West. It's extremely destabilizing, and it is part of this chaos agenda. So that's why one of the main messages that's got to come out from this is our internal security forces have got to pull their socks up, because there is a chaos agenda out there. There are organisations like the fascist group, the Order of Nine Angles, who are trying to push this, which is still not outlawed in Britain, even though it was invented in Britain. So they need to pull their socks up and make sure these sorts of ways of completely destroying and destabilising a society, the sort of thing that people like Hezbollah and the Iranian government have having to put out, are kept well out of the rest of the world. It has to be contained, but it looks to me like it's starting to spread.
So Tony, let me just get this right. So when I asked the question, who benefits from the killing of Charlie Kirk, to William, you believe that the Israeli regime benefits from this assassination? Is that what you're saying?
I think quite possibly, because he was a very powerful influencer in the United States. As I said, he was a leader of young people. And so what was clearly going on was he was starting to be very negative towards the Israeli genocide. He's refusing funding from Netanyahu as well, which the Grey Zone has publicised. And it's quite clear he was starting to veer away. He was his own man, and he decided that what Netanyahu was doing was enough. He's even questioning whether the Israeli army was stood down on October the 7th. These sorts of things the Israelis will not want to hear at all from someone who's supposed to be supported, and someone who
All right, stay with me, Tony. Stay with me, Tony. Let me get William back in on this discussion. Stay with me, Tony.
Please.
Stay with me. Let me get William back in on this. Stay with me, Tony. 1 second. Let me give equal time here to William. Stay with me. I know you're very adamant about this, but I mean, William, your thoughts. I mean, there are reports that 1 in 15 Americans now are witnessing or have witnessed mass shootings. First of all, I want to look at this. I mean, what does this mean to the American psyche? And why are we seeing such an increase in polarization in that country?
Well, obviously, there has been really a lack of policy that people feel has benefited the nation over probably the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years. The American economy, for instance, has gone from bad to worse under the so-called free market ideology that has been practiced over the last few decades. People who 20 years ago, one father of a family could support large families of 6 or 7 children on one job. Today, that is not the case. The shift everybody knows between rich and poor, the rich have gotten richer and the poor are poorer. The conditions of life within the United States are abysmal. Even if you compare it with going to Russia today or going to China, even going to China today in particular, you see the differences in, the communication systems, the infrastructure is all going to hell in a handbasket. And nobody has had the means of actually changing that, which is partially the reason for an outsider like Donald Trump being elected with popular support from the American population who realized that we were going in the wrong direction. Now, he has not been able successfully to turn that around, and it's my opinion that he's not going to be able to do that with his present mode of tariff threats either. But it is a possibility of doing something with this with the right policy. But the fact that that has not been done has created this increasing diversity, increasing split between sections of the population that we saw in the last election or in the last 3 elections, and which we are seeing today on the streets in the rising violence. This is something that I would compare it to the reaction after 9/11, where people were all of a sudden shocked, wondering what is going on here. That can lead to some elements of craziness if people are not thinking rationally. But if they are thinking rationally, what they would do is, as the Utah governor quite clearly stated, and I think this is the feeling of many politicians, even those who are infected with the zeal for their own political lines, they realize that the country somehow has got to come back to some form of normalcy that is away from this wave of violence or threatening your opponents with their lives in the political matters. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to use this tragedy, which everybody has been focused on, even those who were supporters of Charlie Kirk, as well as those who were opponents of Charlie Kirk. They also will be affected. They also know that if this type of violence goes on in the United States, they also can be threatened of, whether they're on the left or on the right. And I think that's what you have to use to try and get a focus. And a lot of this will depend on the attitude of the president and the administration in dealing with this crisis. But the task remains at this point that we have got to get away from this continual, very bitter, very angry, and often very violent rivalry in the country, and try and find common interests in which both parties and people from different points of view can come together for the common good.
All right, well, Tony, some political experts are saying that in reality, the under 40 crowd on both the right and left in the U.S. had been coming together on an increasingly anti-war, pro-Palestine agenda, and that this killing actually benefits those who want to keep the people divided. Your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not sure what effect the killing will have, but yes, that's quite right. As the atrocities go on and on and on from the land of Palestine, so more and more people are starting to think, when is this going to end? And they're starting to realize that Netanyahu is playing a bit of a game with the world for his own political survival. And that obviously hundreds of thousands of people, it now looks like, it's maybe well be into the hundreds of thousands are going to die, and certainly millions are suffering immediately in Gaza because of this one man's political career, and the world seems utterly impotent. So these facts, after an amount of time, do finally filter through. But when it comes to the sort of violence that killed Charlie, we have to really point the finger, I think, at the mainstream press and also at the social media. We just had a big racist rally with Tommy Robinson in London this weekend. And who should pop up to encourage him? Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter, what is now Twitter. He calls it X, doesn't he? So he's there egging on the racists, saying, oh, isn't it terrible? He's trying his best to divide the country in Britain. And of course, he does a similar sort of thing in the United States. So these people are actually looking at profits coming from their organ. Obviously, they would like to use it for influence too, but they make money. The more people use the social media platforms, and so this is why I think they try and create these massive divisions. You get everybody on there and everybody fighting each other. And the more clicks that people do, the more money Mr. Musk will make. And so this is, I mean, they're virtually non-regulated, aren't they? In fact, nobody's even allowed to know about the algorithms that they use. So somebody who's calling for peace, like I do, for example, will find many of their posts you can't view it. It says this is sensitive content. This is difficult. So what I'm saying is the mass media and the social media have caused this sort of situation where all sorts of rumors, smears can go 10 times around the world, have billions of clicks before the truth gets out.
All right. Well, William, some experts say that the powers that be want to keep the masses divided so people can make sure that the masses never unite. And basically turn their attention against the billionaires that, of course, one of them, Tony, was just speaking about. Is this a divide and conquer type of situation, trying to keep the people from being united? And overall, with this environment, where do you think the U.S. is headed?
Well, it's absolutely the case that this is being used. The conflict, the rivalries, the heated debates are always a means of keeping people divided against what is their common interest. And but I think that the ultimate result of this may not be, I don't think, in favor of the country of Israel. Look, Charlie, as the former speaker pointed out, was moving against the genocide in Palestine, talking about it to people who generally considered themselves on the right. And of course, if we look at all the demonstrations that are happening at the universities, these are people who generally are trending toward the left. I wouldn't say that they're all leftists. People who are in the middle of the road are also upset about this whole situation. It's something that we haven't seen since the Second World War, of an entire group of people, entire nation really, being decimated or threatened with decimation by a single power. And I think what may very well happen out of this, to the extent that people do not use this as a cudgel against their political opponents, which maybe even the administration, if they would move in that direction, would be a very bad move. But I think there's a possibility of using this, and even using Charlie's own words on this, to unite those elements who understand, one, that the country is moving in the wrong direction, and two, that what's going on internationally, in the Middle East in particular, in this genocide in Palestine, and also the war in Ukraine, which is also being fomented by those same political elites who realize that the world's population, even in the NATO countries, are being opposed to this war. They want those people divided in order for the policy to go through. I think there's a possibility that we can use this in a positive way to move forward and bring together.
And on that note, I thank both of you. I'm out of time, but I appreciate you, Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist out of Bristol, being with me, and also William Jones, political analyst out of Leesburg, being with us. And thank you, viewers, for staying with us right here in the Spotlight. I'm Marzieh Hashemi. I hope to see you right here next time. Goodbye.